Disclaimer: the following program features language not suitable for all audiences, and the expressed opinions found within this program are a reflection of those who feature on the PopCulture Effect podcast. Welcome to the PopCulture Effect. I'm Rockin Rob, and on this show, I bring my closest friends together to talk about all the news happening in our pop culture world around us.
Heyo, I'm Subset, PopCulture Effect, and today we're going to talk about the Indie Game Awards. We got the list up right
and you're here with...
I myself up so bad.
No, just keep her going. And you're here with...
And I'm here with a couple of my friends, Gemini.
Hello.
And Menace.
Hello.
Now, this week is a bit of a passion project for me because there's some very lengthy topics I'll be going into this week. But the first thing I'm going to be discussing is the fact that WWE's Netflix deal is going to take effect at the start of January. Now, this is going to be very important for the world of professional wrestling, especially with AEW getting their new rights deal, with Rampage wrapping up so they can focus more on Collision and Dynamite, and TNA providing some good alternatives. WWE's Netflix deal is actually something that's going to change how wrestling is looked at. This is no longer going to be a televised thing, this is going to be something streamed. And the one side thing that I want to mention that's going to be kind of a negative on this, we will no longer be able to see the actual viewership numbers from the usual television resources. Since it's on Netflix, they keep the numbers pretty close to their chest, so that is one aspect of it we won't be able to take part in. But this is a bit of an interesting time because I am recording this before the big week of AEW and WWE putting on the shows that will connect 2024 and 2025. I haven't seen Raw, SmackDown, NXT, Dynamite, or Collision, and this isn't really about those shows. This is more about the overall effect that this new Netflix deal will have on wrestling, because yes, there was a dip in interest with AEW, but since they've made the transition to smaller venues, I believe a lot of the negativity people will throw at that company may kind of dwindle because the shows will look more packed and it'll feel like an actual professional wrestling show rather than just something that people can poke fun at. The creative, however, that still needs some work. But the big thing about this Netflix deal is the fact that there is a side issue to this whole situation, and that is the fact that Triple H is going to be ousted from power, and reportedly he's going to be replaced by Brian Gewirtz, somebody who's very close with The Rock. But the one thing I do know is the fact that this Raw that is going to be on Netflix coming up is going to be quite interesting because it's reportedly going to have CM Punk versus Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns versus Solo Sikoa for the Ula Fala, John Cena appearing, and kind of a lot more that I don't really want to get into. But yeah, this is absolutely huge. The fact that with this new deal, WWE essentially can slowly bring over all of their programming onto Netflix, which is so hilarious because they've tried their own streaming site, WWE Network, which is going out of business. It is literally closing as a concept at the start of 2025. And this Netflix deal is pretty huge as it's gonna bring in $5 billion to WWE, and this contract will last 10 years, which is insane. But the other insane part about this is that it has an option to extend to have an additional 10 years or opt out after 5. But we all know this deal is probably going to go on for 20 years, which is insane. This deal is going to go until 2045. And when it comes to AEW's TV rights deal, they got an estimated value of $170 million, which is pretty insane because they can pretty much just, like, with Tony being a billionaire, like, this is just more money to funnel into the product to provide better quality and, you know, better creative. I know that's kind of the sentiment I've been giving a lot, but yeah, Tony, get your shit together, you know, get your creative in a bunch. Maybe bring on Bryan Danielson as a creative consult because, you know, he's retired, he doesn't need to wrestle, he doesn't even need to be there, you could just call him in. that would be my idea, but that's something that I can hope for as Tony kind of structures AEW for 2025, especially now that AEW and Max's partnership will provide extra viewership, as AEW's Dynamite and Collision will be simulcast on TBS, TNT, and Max. So it seems that Tony is also joining the streaming wars. Now, this whole situation is just really interesting for the progression of professional wrestling, because I assume this Netflix deal is going to push Tony to provide better, consistent storytelling that's going to engage fans more. Now that he's got the crowd control kind of under control, he's able to provide a substance that won't get laughed at, you know? WWE never really has that problem because they always have that interest. They've been a mega corporation for so long, but to be honest, I am kind of looking forward to how things are going to shape out, especially with the potential NXT TNA partnership continuing into 2025, but who knows what'll happen there. I'm kind of more interested about the main roster stuff, if I'm going to be honest, especially when characters like Shinsuke Nakamura and Kevin Owens are actually shown off to be threatening. It is actually really refreshing to get this kind of vibe from the overall show. But really, who knows what'll happen when Brian Gewirtz shows up. Anyways, that's pretty much everything I want to discuss when it comes to WWE's upcoming Netflix deal and its ramifications for AEW and subsequently TNA, because who knows what's going to happen, you know? NXT on the CW, that might be brought over to Netflix. Once SmackDown's deal with USA Network comes up, they might get transitioned over as well. It'll be a really interesting time to see all of WWE on a subscription site. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I have to discuss for this week. I'll have a lot more to talk about in the latter half of the episode, but I think it's time for me to send it back to my friends in their discussions on the Indie Game Awards.
So you just want to tackle all this list down one by one? You just want to start from the very top or from the very bottom?
Yeah, we'll go from the top. Like Subset said, we're gonna be doing the Indie Game Awards winners. And I think it should be our episode before this. We talked about the Game Awards for this last year, so now we're going to talk about the Indie Game Awards. We'll start her off with Game of the Year, and the winner was Balatro, Gambling Win. Which, I don't know. I've seen some of these, like Mouthwashing, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. It's never really like horror games that are big for these. I think like Five Nights at Freddy's was the last horror game that really won for
think
indie
so.
game,
Yeah.
which is kind of upsetting. We have Industry Impact for the next one. There are 4 winners for that category. We have Outer Sloth, which is actually a very funny game about sloths in outer space. New Blood, Day of the Devs, and Strange Scaffold. Our winner for debut game is Little Kitty Big City. Notable achievement in accessibility, we have Another Crab's Treasure, which I've played. I love that game so much.
Yeah, same here. So a little biased here. So sorry.
It's okay though. Best music, we have Pacific Drive. For these, there's actually a lot of good ones. We got Core Keeper, Flock, The Cub, Thrasher, and Wild Bastards. I think Pacific Drive is a good pick for this though, considering it is a game where you literally just drive around in a scenic area and jam out to tunes. Visual design, we have Harold Halibut. Don't know what that one is.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Lucky Squire. God damn it.
Lucky Squires, I don't know. I looked into it a little bit. It seems really fun. Next, we have bite-sized game winners. For the winner, we have Thank Goodness You're Here. The only one I really know is Buckshot Roulette from this, so I couldn't really...
No one I know is Duck Detective.
Next up, we have Innovation, which we got a couple good ones in here, like Karma Zoo, Rusty Retirement, Lorelei and Laser Eyes. Winner is Crypt Master.
Creedmaster.
Do either of you know Crypt Master? I've never really.
Nope.
Bad, yeah.
Next up, we have Emotional Impact, which is Neva. If I remember, Neva won Emotional Impact in the actual Game Awards, too.
Mm-hmm.
And remind me not to get that game. I don't want to cry.
And then he'll forget and cry.
Yeah. See the game cover art and be like, ooh, that looks nice.
And
Wonder
then,
what this
Yeah.
is. Oh, God.
and then he was found crying on the bathroom floor for 10 hours.
Next up, we have Gameplay Design. which is Balatro.
Again.
I don't know how poker is a winner for gameplay design, but
Hey man, visually it's how it is, man.
I guess I can understand because it's not just poker. It's like a roguelite deck builder.
Okay.
So and you can get different combos and you can use jokers to do special things. I don't know. It's innovative. Next up, we have community management. So these are the different companies and how they can take care of the community. We got Black Tabby Games, Local Thunk, Massive Monster, NPC Studio, Pronounced Light, and the winner is Aggro Crab, the people that made Another Crab's Treasure, which I don't know if either of you have seen their posts or anything.
I have.
F***ing hilarious. They made an Orlando in the game and posted it as an April Fool's joke.
That's actually pretty funny.
They make a bunch of memes and stuff like that because you can get different shills and stuff in the game.
Mm-hmm.
They'll make like full-on Dark Souls outfits for the little crab guy or like other RPGs type games. They did one where they gave him Cloud Sword because you get a little fork. What was another? There was another good one that they did that I can't remember. Where they have the different difficulties in the game. They have normal, hard, expert, or something like that, and then they have a baby mode. The baby mode, you start off with a shell. The shell that you start off with is a Glock that you can shoot.
Pew. Great.
It's awesome. But moving on, next we have Best Narrative, which is 1,000 Times Resist. I couldn't tell you what that was.
Beats me.
Oh no. The other ones in that category are Arco, Caravan Sandwich, Fear the Spotlight, Last Time I Saw You, and Mouthwash. Best Woman-Led Game, we have Mexico 1921, A Deep Slumber. Okay. But a mouthful for the title.
Ariba.
Hey man. Oh.
Sorry.
And last, we have Solo Development, which the winner is Animal Wells. In this category, we also have Aerial Knights, We Never Yield, Children of the Sun, Crypt Custodian, Knuckle Sandwich, and Magical Delicacy. I don't really have much to say. I've played some of these, I've looked at some of these, but I don't know, indie games don't really pop up on my radar that much, I guess.
Yeah, same here.
They do for me, but it's just hard to keep up with them all half the time, either through like development or they all just blend into one another.
Yeah, I guess the main thing I can say is I'm very glad to Balatro and Another Crab's Treasure, all these ones that have actually like busted through, not only were able to win or be nominated for both this and the normal game awards.
I mean, slowly indie games will be there as well.
Yeah, I'm glad that more and more indie games are starting to show up in the mainstream of like the awards ceremonies and just getting more recognition in general.
Yeah, great. Good to see people have taken the risk and see more and better games, either from little ideas to big ideas.
Especially with like things like Balatro, like where you could take an easy concept like poker and give it a little bit of like add a little roguelite to it and give it a combo multiplier, and you have an you got an entirely different like type of game just by adding a few different concepts to it.
I've done it. I've watched every single Sony spin-off movie. They were mostly terrible. Some parts were okay. But the reason why I watched all these movies is because there was a recent report that Sony is basically done with all of their spin-off movies for their Sony Spider-Man universe. Now, this is kind of telling because all of their movies have pretty much trashed at the box office, with the only salvageable IP out of this Sonyverse is Tom Hardy's Venom series, which just wrapped up with The Last Dance, and also the Spider-Verse series with their upcoming Beyond the Spider-Verse movie. Now, the thing that drives me mad about this whole situation is the fact that Sony Pictures CEO actually said that critics are to blame for the box office failure of Kraven the Hunter and Madame Web. And let me say this right now, I just finished watching all of these movies to get ready to talk about this whole thing. And no, it's not recency bias, it's not the fact that, the critics trashed it, or, the haters trashed it. No, they're terrible movies. Kraven the Hunter had good action scenes, just like Morbius. There was some parts that were great, but the character writing and the story progression was just kind of nonsensical, honestly. I didn't get, especially with Madame Web. Madame Web was by far the worst, most wasted time movie I've ever actually sat through. And the fact that Sony's CEO is literally saying they're not bad films, like, it is crazy. Like, he literally went on, when he spoke to Los Angeles Times, he said, quote, "So that didn't work out very well," which I still don't understand because the film is not a bad film. But, like, I don't understand how he can say that when everybody from fans and critics can say movies like Craven, which was the one he was talking about, and Madame Web and Morbius, they're all bad films because we don't want to see all of these anti-hero or villain characters be turned into heroes. I don't want to see Craven smiling and cracking jokes, you know? Okay, I will admit, Morbius, the way his character was articulated and the way visually he was represented, Morbius was cool. But the story, there was kind of just no plot, honestly. Just like the rest of these movies. There's just kind of no plot, and they're just movies to say, hey, we own these IPs, let's make these movies. And it is very disingenuous for the CEO to say they're not terrible movies, because they are bad movies. They're bad movies because I actually have thought about this over the past couple weeks, and I even came up with a better idea for what we could see from this quote-unquote Sony Spider-Man universe. Now, the whole thing is the fact that they can't use Peter Parker, right? We have Ben Parker and Madame Web, we have a baby being born, and he's the uncle. Obviously, that's Peter, but they never say his name. They can't legally say Peter Parker's name. That's totally fine. I get that. But the problem is, you have Ben Reilly, you have Jessica Drew, you have Mary Jane, you have Gwen Stacy, you have Flash Thompson. You have so many other versions of people who've taken on the moniker of being a Spider-Person. Oh, speaking of Spider-Person, Madame Web, just say Spider-Man. Also, one side tangent about Madame Web. Why did the guy who was the guy that was going to tutor the daughter and teach her powers, why was he just wearing regular civilian clothes that when they met back up? That didn't make any sense. But either way, so we could have literally seen every single one of these movies. We could have seen a Spider-Person take on Morbius or take on Craven, but instead of it being from the Spider-Man perspective, it could be from an antagonist-protagonist type viewpoint when we're seeing the villain side of things when they have to fight off this Spider-Person. It's such an easy way to go about this. But no, Sony's just done. They're done with their live-action spin-off movies, except for all of the efforts they've put into Tom Holland's Spider-Man 4, the animated Spider-Verse, the animated Spider-Man trilogy Enter Beyond the Spider-Verse, as well as the Nick Cage live-action Spider-Noir series. Beyond that, they have said they want to shift away from these series, and it's kind of obvious. Go with what makes the most money. And by far, the character that won the hearts of everybody, aside from Peter B. Parker and Gwen Stacy and Miles, it was Spider-Noir. Spider-Ham was great, and Penny Parker was great, but Spider-Noir took the freaking cake. Just like this whole franchise took the cake away from their audience. Now, before signing off, I just actually want to fully articulate why these movies are bad, so that way the Sony CEO can have a little inkling as to why their fans aren't receptive to these. It doesn't matter if we're talking Morbius, Craven, Madame Web, or in some cases the Venom franchise. Sony can't do live action. But what they specifically can't do is they can't make interesting villain characters. They always have to turn them into being goody two-shoes. We saw that with Craven, we saw that with Morbius, and we saw that with Venom. Now, Venom I kind of get, but genuinely, all these characters, like, treat them like villains. Treat them how they're supposed to be treated. Write them how they're supposed to be written in the comics. You have so much material to pull from to be like, oh, how is this character supposed to act? How is this character supposed to talk? What opinions and viewpoints does this character have? And also, just choose characters that people will care about. Like, genuinely, it's just crazy how we see these amazing action pieces, amazing visuals in the movie, but the story and character writing is just the worst ever. Whether it's Madame Web with its inconsistencies, whether it's Morbius and it's kind of fast-paced with no actual progression, or it's Craven where it feels like Kraven's not even Kraven. These movies were destined to be bad because they were corporately created. I'm not saying that the Sony Venomverse and the Spider-Verse aren't also corporately created, but at least those connected with fans. Those used characters and IPs that people cared about. Those wrote characters in ways that were engaging to audiences. That is the key. And see, the thing that upsets me most about this whole thing is Sony knows how to make good, compelling movies. Like, they've literally written 3 Venom movies, which, yeah, haven't been the best, but they were good. They chose characters that people cared about. And look at Spider-Verse. Yes, it's like a gigantic multiverse mashup, and that's pretty much what everybody kind of was wanting after Endgame when they started the whole multiverse bullshit. But it's just absolutely ridiculous that Sony have the gall, and Sony's CEO has the gall, to say that it's the critics' fault for these movies failing? No, it's a mismanagement of characters. It is a mismanagement of writing. It's a mismanagement of your workforce. Because if you choose projects and you push projects that nobody asks for, and then in some cases you overwork your animation studio, or you overwork all of your other departments, but not only will you get the bad press of having a bad movie, but you'll also have the added bad press of mistreating your workforce. Now, I know this was an issue with Across the Spider-Verse, and granted, it was a beautiful film. It was honestly, it was way better than the first movie, but it was just so good. It was less of a complete story as the first movie was, but it's just ridiculous to me that they have so much IP. They have so many different elements that they could use at their disposal, and yet they choose every single possible bad choice that they could ever choose. Genuinely, I want to genuinely ask this. Who asked for Morbius? Who asked to see Madame Web? Who asked to see Kraven the Hunter? You know what people did ask for? To watch Tom Hardy be Venom because he's great. They want to watch Miles Morales be Spider-Man because he is great. They want to watch Tom Holland be Spider-Man because he is great. Nobody watches these spider flicks for anything but Spider-Man. It caps off what I was saying at the start of this topic. All they have to do, or all they had to do to fix this whole problem, was to write these villains to fight other spider people. And to be honest, if you want my headcanon of what they could have done, they could have compiled all of the live action characters from this verse, bring them into the animated universe, and have there be a Sinister Six. Imagine the Spot in the background ripping apart reality. You have the Prowler fighting against Miles. You have this new Spider Squadron that could go up against the Sinister Six. I think that would have been the best use, because then you could tie up all of their stories. You don't have to make any more movies, and you can just either sell the rights to Marvel or just move on. Granted, the fact that Sony just hoards the Spider-Man IP is disgusting. I mean, it's their literal cash cow. They can't get rid of it or else they'll go under and get bought out. And now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go wait for Beyond the Spider-Verse, and maybe I'll go watch it Across the Spider-Verse again, because I just need to get this Sony taste out of my mouth. CEO Tony Vinciera, get your shit together, know what your fans want, and stop just making shit for the sake of, oh, we have the IP, let's make it so we don't run out the rights for this IP. I am pretty much done talking about this. I just wanted to discuss all of the new news coming out of Sony Pictures, with its deprioritization of the spin-off movies, as well as the Sony CEO just kind of being out of touch and not really knowing what their fans want. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to discuss for this week. But now I think it's time for me to send it back to my friends to end this week's episode.
Well, that is all we have for us today. I'd like to thank both the people here with me. Thank you, Tren.
A pleasure as always.
And thank you, Subset.
Heyo!
And I'd like to thank you guys all for listening and watching. If you are watching on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you are watching on CJSW, make sure to go and check the other awesome shows that we got over there. And we will see you in the next one. Bye.
Heyo!
Bye.